Hello. Hey everybody, so my name's Kiara. If I didn't get the chance to introduce myself to y'all prior to us beginning, but my name is Kiara, like I said, and I am the SGA president. And we just kind of wanted to host this little town hall today to encourage people to come with their opinions, their questions, their concerns about the student engagement proposal. We're also having our live stream, everybody on the live stream, and people can ask questions through that as well. If you didn't hear me or you just walked in, if you're not comfortable talking out loud, asking a question, making a comment, you can scan this QR code and it'll bump it up there. And you can type your name or you can just be anonymous, either or. So that's a resource that we have for you all, so don't be afraid to use it. But this is just kind of a time for you all to ask questions about things you've already heard. So yeah, we're going to kind of open it up for questions, and before we do that, I'll introduce the people we have here, and just in case you're not familiar with them. So this is Gage. He's our vice president. He's just going to kind of be mediating our questions. He runs our SGA meetings, and he's very good at structure. And so please wait for him to call on you, and if he, he's going to kind of lead the question period, but we'll be doing all the answering of the questions. So I'm Kiara. This is Dr. Geis. If y'all don't know, he's the president of our university. And then Dr. Wood, he is our Vice President of Athletics and our Athletic Director. And then Dr. Crawford, he is our Vice President of Student Advancement. And then down here we also have Dean Speed and Ty Hawk, who is our SGA Treasurer. And then Bronson's down here running the live stream. Yeah, so if y'all have any questions, we can go ahead and get started with that. Yeah, for sure. So, Gage, y'all can just go ahead and raise your hands.
All right, we do have one question that's submitted. Can you reintroduce the bill or student fee proposal so we are on the same footing?
Yes. So, the student engagement fee proposal is basically, I'll kind of give you all the story of how it came into my realm of things, just kind of like I have every time we've presented it to an organization or a group of people or even SGA. So, kind of about in October, as SGA president, I go to a lot of these things where a lot of times I'm the only student in the room. And so at one of those things, a lot of times they're really boring and a lot of times they don't really have a whole lot to do with me. At one of those things during homecoming week, it was a luncheon. I was eating good. I was eating great. I was just focusing on that. And this guy got up to talk and he shared a thing that kind of struck my attention, and it was that we needed a $300 per student per quarter athletic fee. And now this was an alumni that doesn't really have a whole lot to do with the organization structure of our university, but he does donate a lot of money, and so he had a platform to say one of these things, and that just didn't sit right with me. At $300 per quarter per athletic fee, that'd be $900 per year per full-time student, and that just was kind of ridiculous sounding to me. And so from that point, it started a lot of conversations, not just in our university or among our alumni, but also among faculty, among people that were and staff that were in that room. And part of my job is to make sure that every time that a student is involved in a conversation or any time the student body is involved in a conversation, that I'm a part of it. So what did I do? I inserted myself into those conversations. And I really wanted to learn what fees we pay, why we pay them already, the current fees that we pay, current fees that are paid in our system. And side note, our system, which is something that might be referred to a lot in this meeting, is kind of like what I've described it as what would be the friend group of our university. So the friend group of our universities consists of Nicholls State University, Northwestern State University, ULM, ULL, Southeastern, and UNO. And we are all kind of governed by the same board. I don't know if I'm missing one, but if I am. We're all kind of governed by the same board, and then above that is kind of the state level as well. So I wanted to know all the fees that people in our system pay, because those are institutions that are kind of like similar to ours, and then all the fees athletic-wise that are paid in our conference. So our conference is kind of the people that we play in conference play, and that's how we advance to other places. So I wanted to learn all about that. So from October to December, Okay. From October to December, I just kind of learned about what a student fee is, what athletics does, because something I'm not very familiar with is athletics. That's when I kind of brought our SGA treasurer in. He's very familiar with athletics, not just on the collegiate level or at Louisiana Tech, but in general, I don't really know anything about much else than the ball going in the hoop, the touchdown happening. That's about it. As far as my athletic knowledge goes, so I wanted to kind of create a smaller team to just kind of educate not only myself, but each other on what student fees in general, not including athletics, looks like, but also the athletics piece of, do other schools do this? Like, why is this, would this be an option for us? And then while I was doing while I was educating myself on those things, I realized, I kind of read the writing on the wall, and I realized that this was a real possibility that this was going to happen. And I had two choices at this point. I could just push it off to the next SGA president or to the next SGA president and give them the opportunity to deal with it so I didn't have to. Because I want you to believe me and trust me, because I know a lot of people in this room don't know me, and I don't know you personally. But when I ran for SGA president, I did not put rush fee on any of my t-shirts. I did not want to raise student fees. I didn't want you to have to pay more money to go to school. I didn't want to pay more money to go to school. My siblings go here. I didn't want them to pay more money to go to school. But like I said, I read the writing on the wall, and I could push it off to the next SGA president or 5 SGA presidents from now and give them the opportunity to construct a fee that had a considerable amount go to athletics. Or we could gather a group of student leaders from all areas of campus, from diverse areas of campus, and we could try to combat the inevitable of an athletic fee with smaller portions that could benefit students across campus. And I know what you're thinking, like, why? Why would we have to even talk about a fee in the first place? And that's something that you guys can ask questions about, and that these three guys up here can answer questions a lot better than me about why athletics is important, why they need money, why they are being prioritized over those other groups. But I do just want you to know that, but I do just want you to know that if this doesn't pass, that's fine, because that's not what our current student body wants. But in 5 years, it could just include athletics. And then there would not be any opportunity for those other areas of the student body, for those other areas of campus to receive any funding at all. And I know that some of you are like, who cares? Because you don't have to prioritize investing in Louisiana Tech and investing in the future Bulldogs. But I do have to tell you that that is my job description. My job description does entail making sure that your experience is good, but not only your experience, but the students that come after you. And so I have to prioritize investing in Louisiana Tech properly, because I don't want to raise student fees. But I didn't trust anybody else to do it right. So I thought this was an opportunity for us to make it our own, for the students to have somewhat of a voice. And you're like, I didn't have a voice, but I promise you that there was somebody at the table that constructed this fee that looked like you. There was somebody at this table that thought like you. There was somebody at this table that was in your college. There was somebody at this table that wasn't from Louisiana, that pays out-of-state fees, that doesn't go here for free. And I can't promise you that the next time that this comes up, that will be the same. So I'm not asking you to agree with me. I'm not asking you to yada whatever. But I am asking you to just kind of be open-minded and just kind of educate yourselves on this and just vote. So circling back to what the fee looks like, I'm going to pull it up on my phone real quick so I don't misspell myself.
So the fee, just to remind everybody, it's a total increase of $150 per quarter per student, on top of the fees we already pay. In total, that is an estimated annual revenue of over $3.5 million. The breakdown is $3 to underserved students. So this would be minority students, minority organizations on campus, the Office of Multicultural Affairs, and everything that they oversee to provide scholarships, provide programming, provide more opportunities to those students. That's a huge recruiting piece here at Louisiana Tech, because we want to have a diverse campus, and we want to have a diverse student body of people from different backgrounds, in all different places. Mental health is $4. This is an increase of the $50 fee that is already paid. It's your $50 student health fee. That $50 already goes towards the counseling center, the career center, and then the Office of Disability Services on campus. So that's a $4 increase from $50 that's already there just to the counseling center. They see over 2,000 students on this campus, and they are really overwhelmed, so that's to provide more staffing, equipment and technology that they use, so that they can see the students as often as they need to. Currently, they're not able to do that. And then $5 for spirit groups, cheer, regal blues, chant, and the band. Obviously, y'all know the developments going on the other side of Tech Drive with new housing, new and rural facilities. The plan there is to get them a new facility. They practice in Lambright, or cheer and regals practice in Lambright. And it's not really suited for what they do. They don't really have full capabilities to do what they need to do in those facilities. So that's essentially the goal there. And then sports clubs, that's a $1 increase to help with travel expenses, to help with uniform costs, because they go and compete regionally and represent our university just as much as anybody else on campus does. $2 for Greek life. The fee here, this $2 per student, is just under $50,000 a year. The sole designation of this $2 per student is to hire a full-time Greek life coordinator that would work under Wes Catton, who's the director of student activities. The Greek students on campus make up somewhere around 10%, probably a little bit less, of our entire student body. A Greek life coordinator is something that a lot of other schools comparable to us in our system and our conference have. That's not something that we have. This is a kind of a liability to start. On top of that, it's a resource for those students. Wes Catton is the only person doing that job. He's overseeing all of Greek life, plus the other 200 student organizations on campus. So it's going to take a lot of sweat off of his back. He'll be able to devote time to other organizations on campus and give them the attention that they deserve as well. And then $135 of the fee to athletics. There's a breakdown of that we'll probably get to here in just a minute. If you have more specific questions, I don't want to get into that too much myself. We have people that are much more qualified to do that. So.
So just the questions that I can answer, that I'll start with answering just from our point of view, because that's some of our director just sorts us. I'm going to start with the top one, obviously. So why should I pay for Greek life when I'm not currently involved in Greek life? So I'm Greek. I'm going to be transparent with y'all. I was Greek. I graduated, I was Greek like a month ago. And I understand, but I think one of the important things to recognize is that 10% of our student body is a good deal of our student body. And then you're like, I'm not involved in that. Well, I don't use the Lambright every day. And I pay for that. And I don't necessarily use all of my prints every year. And I know these are different things. These are resources that you don't necessarily pay for your entire students, but you also pay for union board events, and you also pay for not necessarily that you utilize every day, but that benefits the overall experience at Louisiana Tech. And I can promise you that a Greek life coordinator would increase safety on this campus, and it would also increase education about alcohol in groups of students that, not just alcohol, but also other things that are sometimes affiliated with a group of people that you guys can catch my drift. It's very necessary on our campus, and I know that you think it doesn't affect you, but I think that we can all agree that if students aren't behaving safely and they were never educated how to do so, and maybe they were educated, but they didn't have proper attention given to them to make sure that they could be successful, then it can affect more than just that group of students, for sure. Mr. Speed, you oversee Greek life, but do you want to speak to that any? Why students should pay for Greek life if they're not involved in it?
There's just limited numbers of administrative support for all student organizations and all students, and all this would do is give us one more body to work specifically with one of our largest student populations as it relates to a specific need. So you can look at this as a coordinator. We're actually currently interviewing right now for Clark's old position. And so that position had a component that we would be able to remove from him so he can spend more time with the other student organizations.
You want to look at the last question and talk about it? Okay. Babysitter.
No, I think that was a little bit misconstrued. I think the more proactive you can be with any student group, the better we're going to be. But as far as the safety, I think what we're looking at is being proactive and making sure there's proper training. There's always a stigma that goes along with Greek life, but there's not another group on campus that does as much when it comes to philanthropic efforts. The amount of money they raise for philanthropies is amazing. And they also have a lot of leadership components that come with that. We want to do a little bit more that's a little bit more progressive, do a little bit more trainings and things where if we had the staff, we would be a little bit more equipped to do so.
You had a question?
I was gonna ask, how are the numbers, like the specific dollar amounts in the,
How are they like constructed or decided on?
make that bad, or do you like?
Okay, so after we had initial conversations with Dr. Crawford, we constructed that focus group of people that sat at the table that I was talking about, and that consisted of about 15 to 20 students from across campus and very different areas, students that never would have intersected before. I say this to answer your question to just let you know that it wasn't like a cherry picking of students. But we sat down and we asked, first of all, we thought into ourselves, we were like, what is a number that we feel comfortable with, that everybody in the room, and by number I mean the bottom number, the 150 per quarter number. We wanted to decide on a per quarter number that would not necessarily limit access to students in the room, because like I said, we had a lot of students in that room that came from very different socioeconomic backgrounds. And one of the comments made was like, look, like I want to look at this from a point of view as like that, then let's say the number we had up there, this is egregious, but like $200, like that's the number that we proposed. I wouldn't be able to be here. I wouldn't have been able to apply here as a freshman. And we also looked at numbers as it relates to our system. So even if this fee increase does pass, we still would be right there with ULL. We wouldn't be more expensive than them. And so after we asked that question, we knew that this was an athletic-centric fee. From the beginning, this was an athletic-centric fee that we could compound good, beneficial things with. And so we wanted to know, we weren't going to do this if we didn't feel comfortable with the number that Dr. Wood said was most beneficial for them. He said 100, they would be happy with any money because they don't receive any student fees right now, which is almost unheard of in collegiate sports at the moment. But we didn't want to do it if we weren't comfortable with that number. So we asked him what the minimum he thought could be allocated to the athletics department that was worth causing a stir up with our students, because one thing that I really wanted to prioritize was making sure that this was going to be worth it. And so when he came up with that $135, the students in that room did the breakdown off of that. We gave the most to mental health because that was one of the only areas that goes to all students. Next to underserved students because they don't have any funding right now. Next to spirit groups because they share, it's like $1.25 right now between all of them. And then next to Greek life because that was the next largest group of students, and then sports clubs. And all of those areas were chosen because it relates to the engagement of our university. So basically like extracurricular activities, if that makes sense.
Another piece to the individual dollar amounts, when we ran through this, we weren't necessarily focusing on like how much each student was paying. We focused on that annual revenue to the right.
Yeah.
And what we did from the start was meet with the people who oversee those departments. So Dean Lovebond, Dr. Owen, who oversees the counseling center, folks in Lambright, people within the band and the spirit groups. We met with them to say, hey, here's what we think. Does this look like a number that you can can use wisely and a number that will benefit you greatly. We weren't necessarily focused on the dollar amount per student. Obviously, yes, that's something that stands out, but we were focused on the annual revenue because when you look at those numbers, it's in any of those categories, it's something that's going to be very beneficial to those departments.
Yeah, and when you kind of look at it from that standpoint, like for underserved students, that's a 100% increase in their budget. And for mental health, we spend about $600,000 a year right now, Dr. Crawford, if that's correct. That's a 12% increase in their budget. And while athletics that's a 17% increase in their budget, and that's only a 12% increase in athletics budget. So I understand that when you look at the dollar amounts, that's a lot, but compared to operating budget terms, which I know is not super fun, and you might not be very educated on it, and I wasn't, but it's only a 12% increase in their budget. That makes sense. Does that answer your question?
Let's go ahead and do an athletics piece breakdown. There's a lot of people in here with that, I think.
We're not doing that. We're just letting them ask questions.
So,
Warren?
so you were mentioning, sorry, him specifically in the front row. You were mentioning the fee breakdown. How about some of the fees that we already pay? For instance, the housing booking fee, the hourly class fees, the laboratory fees, and the student technology fees. Can you give us a breakdown of what we pay for those?
I'm going to turn that one over to Dr. Crawford. I couldn't give you off the top of my head, but we did, Kiara and I did meet with our Vice President of Finance and looked at all the fees that the students pay and where those fees go. And so I couldn't sit here and talk about my head and break out every single one of those. But like I mentioned, some of the housing and booking fees. So for reservations for housing, would be a little bit different than the technology fee. It goes to all the students, all the campus to provide technology for like computer classrooms and things like that.
So my follow-up to this question is, we pay all these fees, and yet we're in classrooms, laboratories, and housing conditions that are under maintenance, obsolete. Why should we be paying this if we're not confident that it's actually going towards paying for those things?
Well, those be conversations I'd be glad to have with as far as housing that's under maintenance. We're building new housing, a lot of new housing in the last 10 to 20 years. As far as academic buildings, and Dr. Rice can speak to this if you like. We just built a new engineering building, college business, this building as well. And so we're continuing to add there as well. So the university spent a lot of money, hundreds of millions of dollars on new construction just in the last decade, 15 years. So we're continuing to do that. That's not going to stop. The thing I guess I want to say, you heard Kiara talk about student engagement. And so the point behind that was that national research in higher education is very clear is that students are more engaged in their learning experience and taking that personal initiative to be engaged, both in the classroom and outside the classroom, are much more likely to succeed in higher education. What we talk about by succeeding, the retention from first year to second year, and all the way to graduation. Louisiana Tech does have the highest retention rate in our system in the state. First year, second year, and the fastest graduation rate in the state. But we're not going to settle there. We want to continue to recruit students and retain students and graduate students. And that's what we're about. From the first time we talked about this, the students as well as administration said we don't want to do anything that hurts our ability to recruit students and grow in our enrollment and retain students and graduate students. And so the belief is this fee, and we're not asking you to agree. You may not agree. The belief is that this student engagement fee is going to help us to recruit, grow in enrollment, and retain students and grow graduation rates. So that's the purpose behind it from the very beginning.
Right, but even then, if there's already distrust as to where those other fees that I mentioned are going, how can we trust that the other areas that you mentioned besides athletics are actually going to those areas? How can we trust the administration to put funds towards those areas
So the distrust, is the distrust on all those areas that relates to the fee, or is there
It's
certain
just in general.
in general?
Have you talked to anyone directly about your distrust?
Not exactly, because I honestly don't know where to go for that.
I'll share my contact information with you afterwards, we can have a conversation. Any distrust that you guys have as students, find the proper path, find the proper person to talk to, and I don't have all the answers, and no one person does, but we will connect you. This is the university, and I've worked with colleagues from all across the state and all across the country. This is a university that cares about its students. So we're not gonna let, you mentioned residential life, I can tell you, I work directly with residential life, that's one of my departments. We can get to the bottom of whatever issue you have. And so we will make sure we create a sense of trust there. So we'll talk afterwards. I think that's less of a fee issue and more of something where there has to be open communication. We can handle that.
And I assure you, I'll make sure you get the information you need if you would request it. Before I came to this meeting, I spent an hour with our faculty and staff at their University Senate meeting. And I laid out for them what we're doing in terms of capital outlay requests for the legislature and how we're asking the money to renovate George T. Madison and to renovate Carson Taylor Hall and to build another center to support forestry that's in desperate need of some investment in the South Campus, and how we've done the roofing recently on Wiley Tower, George T. Madison, and A.E. Phillips, and how we're requesting money for roofing this year for Davison Hall and the Bogart Hall that's in bad shape, and 2 or 3 other buildings, and how we're requesting money right now to replace the chillers on the air conditioning systems for Wiley Tower and other major buildings on campus, and how we're trying to replace the facilities in the power plant that are in desperate need of continuing so we can continue to operate these facilities. There's a lot of costs that have to be borne by the university, and none of those are covered by the student fees. Those are all things that we bring in from the outside. It takes all of these different things to come together to make the university operate. We all benefit right now from the investments that people made over the past several decades at Louisiana Tech. And I know a lot of those people. I know those former students that made the same kind of tough decisions that you're considering right now that we benefit, that puts the programs in place that we all benefit from. It makes this a great university that allows us to attract great people like you here on a continuing basis. To stay current and relevant, you have to continue to grow. And so that's really what we're committed to do is one way or the other to provide this unparalleled experience for every student that comes here. And I will tell you that our alumni have also been extremely generous to what we do. And many of those alumni are ones that have been active on campus in terms of fraternities or sororities or athletics. And they don't just come back and give to those fraternities and sororities and athletics. They come back and give all across this campus. We would not have the facilities that we have now if we didn't have those investments. So it is a big, I think your questions are good and we need to add clarity to that. But I want you to understand from my standpoint how significant it is that we all be a part of making this a greater institution for the future.
All right, we had a question in the back, there's a gentleman.
Yeah, he's up for me.
Okay, who's that?
Picture.
Gentlemen.
Go ahead.
Hi, so first, I walked down an exhibit to show the administration of UTERA.
Okay.
The first thing is I'm in agreement with you that I want this university to grow and, become more prosperous over the years. But the main thing is, I have a real question with that. And I've heard the same point that investment in our athletics program will be a catalyst for growth of our university over the upcoming years. And I can understand that point of view, but I don't know how to rationalize that with, this right here, this is a Reddit post, or just a post on social media that went viral earlier this year of our university. At the top it says, university classroom versus same university's football locker room. This has been seen by millions of people. This is becoming the image of this university, that we are not taking care of our academics before our athletics. So how do we equate these things of putting more money into athletics that may actually hurt our university's image in the long run and is actively hurting our university's image in the present?
Yeah, what I'll say to that picture is that I think it'd be a fair comparison if you showed the picture for the athletic facility, the business facility, or the engineering building, or you call it business. So that'd be fair. Also, there would be facilities, I think, areas that Dr. Wood would show that would not be one that he would take people on a tour in athletics. It'd be more comparison to the classroom. So I think my point would be across this campus, we have areas that we need to improve on. We've been improving where we could, the money available, like I said, money we've raised privately, money we've raised through taxes and bonds, to try to improve the facility where we can without putting too much burden on the students and the cost of attendance to the university. So we're going to continue to do that. That classroom we're talking about there is part for some improvements in the near future.
Absolutely, but I would follow up with that then. Why are we waiting until the present to do that? Dr. Guy said himself earlier that, we made these requests to the state this year to get these things fixed. I've been to some of our other University of Louisiana schools, UNO being one in particular, to see their advancements in their facilities and just been around their campus to see what facilities they have to offer. And I don't think we're comparable. You said it earlier, providing an unparalleled experience for our students. And I think that's something we should absolutely be looking to provide. But we cannot be this far behind. Why is it now that we are being asked to put this money and effort? Why is it being asked at all to put this money and effort into athletics, which is only benefiting our athlete team present, instead of putting something forward that's going to benefit us right now?
Yeah, so in my position, the UL system that we talk about, I travel all over the state with people that are my counterparts, and I think I can say this more than them. I don't think that any other institutions' facilities are anywhere close to being up to par with ours, especially not just within our system, but within our state. And I think that we invest more in facilities that are going to affect our students and than any other institution in this state. And I wouldn't have said that before I got the opportunities that I had. I know not everybody gets to sit in a seat where they get to travel with all the other SGA presidents in the state, and they get to see the worst. But I promise you that the worst of our university, the other SGA presidents would still be like, wow, And it's not necessarily that we don't always have. We're always going to have to work towards providing a parallel experience. We're always going to have to work towards making improvements for across campus. And I know that the DAC is crazy when I start running. But one of the coolest parts about the DAC, about an athletic facility, is that we get to use it for free as students. And that is not something that happens at many other institutions. And I know that at school, I am a King's major, so I'm a STEM major. I've taken many a class in the Adams Hall, but I've also taken nice classes in the engineering building. And I've also changed over to the club and take a lot of classes in the College of Business. And I also get to sit in meetings where they talk about capital outlay plans and how they're investing in the College of Liberal Arts and they're investing in the College of Applied Natural Sciences. And that gets me excited because it's my job to make sure that your experiences are just as great as engineers and just as great as the College of Business is. And I promise you that there are things in the works to make that happen. And I didn't really understand why I'm a very efficient person. I like things to happen. I'm not very patient there. I like things to happen exactly when we need them, but things like this, like the capital outlay plans, they take almost 10 years to construct. And like the engineering building was something that was thought of when we were probably still in middle school, and then it was built when I was here. I don't know, speak for a whole while, but thank you for presenting it.
Thank you. I guess I just haven't seen that as much yet, but I do hope I can see that at Tech because I do want us to be a great school.
For sure, and I appreciate that.
Maintenance especially, I really hope we don't have to be in classroom mode for much longer because that's upsetting.
All right, we'll circle back to some questions submitted online.
Well, wait, the back of the guy in the back.
We had this way before.
Okay.
Let's just talk about, there was 2 questions that concern mental health, so I'll read one of those that kind of surmises. Will you be open to having a bigger percentage going to mental health and underserved students instead of athletics? So if someone would like to speak to the distribution of funds, specifically what mental health is going to be used for.
Yes, so as far as mental health, we, like we said earlier, or mentioned, we spend currently a little $600,000 a year for mental health, and that is a number that has been increasing the cost of the need for those students. And I would say that we are very fortunate here at this university compared to our other sister schools in the amount of resources we have for mental health. Dr. Owen and her staff have done a phenomenal job at helping our students, but we know that is a need is continuing to grow, continuing to increase. And it's something that we're not going to put aside. We're going to continue to reach out to students and meet those needs by adding staff, by adding resources. This fee will help with that. It's in addition to the $600,000 that we're already doing. And so we want to continue that, and we want to continue to provide the resources. But it's up to the students, to look at how we can do that as far as funding. We're trying to be cognizant of what we pay, like you said, in tuition fees, and we want to continue to be cognizant of that. And a few years ago, we were one of the top universities, top public university in the country, graduating students with the least amount of debt, and we take that very seriously. But we also want to be able to continue to provide these resources that are needed. But students' fees are one way that we can do that. And in addition to, you heard Dr. Dykes mention about alumni giving. And so really, those are the ways that we can grow this university is through alumni giving, revenue that's generated through the activities that we do on this campus, through athletic revenues, and through auxiliary revenues like housing, food, bookstore, recreation, and then tuition fees. So that's the way we can provide revenue back into facilities, back into services. And so that's why we want to do that in addition to everything else you saw mentioned from the health.
All right, we had the question from the gentleman in the back. You want to go ahead?
I just had a few questions first off. You said Greek life is 10% of the student population. A couple other ones I just wanted to know about. What percentage of the student body is, considered in the athletics that would benefit, or what percentage of the student body are student athletes, and what percentage of the student body currently utilizes federal loan or just loans of any type to pay for tuition? Anybody can give me a number.
I'll start with the federal loans and let me talk about it. But for federal loans, it varies from year to year, but on average, at Louisiana Tech, about 25% of our students receive federal loans, which is the lowest in the state right now, as far as that goes. But part of the reason it is the lowest is that we are one of the highest for scholarship universities in the state. We call it tuition discount rate. The discounting of the tuition rate at Louisiana Tech through scholarships, through out-of-state fee waivers, is very, very high compared to our sister institutions. And so that does help with keeping the percentage of our student bodies having to borrow money low comparatively to other institutions. But on average, it's around about 25%. In some years, maybe a little bit more than that, a little less than that on average. But I'll let you talk about that one.
I hope I answered your question here. If not, just follow back up. But right now, so each quarter, our numbers change a little bit with walk-on, like those that are not scholarship. Right now, as of the winter quarter, we had 336 student athletes. Okay. What I would share though is that at your average, let's just say your average football game, and I hate to admit that we had a 3-9 season, but even in the 3-9 season, 30% of our student population was there every Saturday. We were somewhere in that 2,500 to 3,000. And we were north of 8,000 full-time enrolled students. If my math is right, we were just about over 30% every Saturday are participating in a football event, never mind, not counting any of the other sports. But our number was 336 this past winter, and I hope that gives you some perspective of that.
So, I got a couple of things I want to cover real fast, and I'll be brief. I just wanted to thank y'all for taking your time also to come down here and talk to us. I really do appreciate it. And I will say, as much as we've all been dogging on the fees that we have to pay, there's two in particular that I really enjoy. It's ones that allows me to print 300 pages a week. I do appreciate that. I don't have a printer at home. Printering costs more than gold, and it's been really helpful. And the other one, for me personally, I really like the 3D printer options that we have at the computer labs over in Tom. That's been a benefit not only to me, but I'm sure other students out there who don't have a 3D printer at home and would like to get creative. But here's the thing. Cost of tuition has gone up an insane rate since, say, 1980. It used to be back in the day, you hear all these older people talk about, oh, I could work all summer and pay my tuition for the whole year. Well, personally, this year I had 10 hours for tuition, which totaled up to $3,675 just for one quarter. And in order to do that at a minimum wage job, which I think we can all agree is, baseline here, we take about 507 hours, and that's not including taxes or living expenses, to pay that tuition. And that's just for one quarter. That's not even the whole year. Now, not everybody has the option to go out and get an internship over the summer, and depending on what major you are, your internship hourly rate may vary. But the point of it is, we're paying more in tuition now than they were 40 years ago. And while yes, wages have not risen as much, and minimum wage is a whole other topic for a whole other economy lesson, but the point is, I keep hearing, we got to raise things. I never see anything about lowering the cost of tuition, lowering fees at all. It's all about more. And it's frustrating as somebody who's trying to work hard to graduate as close to debt-free as possible. And, it's frustrating to see all these new fees tacked on for, Greek life, which you say takes up 10% of our student body. So, we got 12,000 students. So, and even less of that percentage is athletics. The other thing too is, this is about education. Why, as American culture, have we put so much emphasis into sports in colleges when we come here to get a degree so that we can get a job? And it's damning of the American, the American society as a whole, how we put more emphasis on sports than we have actual education. And like the gentleman in the white hat, I don't know your name, but like you said earlier, we were talking about the fees. You said we weren't focused on the dollar amount per student. And that right there tells me everything I need to know about, the higher ups in the universities. You care about money, and we get it. That's, we need money to function. But hearing statements like that, again, like the gentleman in black shirt over here said, doesn't help a lot of confidence as, somebody who's trying to just get here, get my degree and go, and get on with my life. All this to say, it's always going up. It never goes down. Thank you.
All right, we haven't full circle to the top light question on here. Why did Tech pay for the quote Aspire end quote sculpture if we could have used that towards these fees?
So I hope you enjoy
Hey,
the
y'all, listen up.
Aspire Plaza. It's a piece of art that we're able to celebrate. Every time we construct a new facility that's paid for by the state requires you to take 1% of the cost of that facility. They actually keep it down in Baton Rouge, and they ask you to develop an art project. to celebrate the art in the new construction. This is a state policy requirement. We could not spend that 1% on anything else. What we decided to do was take 1% from 4 different buildings: the business building, the engineering and science building, the University Hall, this building renovation, when we added this where you're meeting, and Tech Point, which is where some of you sometimes have jobs because you're wasn't able to be able to do those on campus. We took 1% of those 4 buildings, commissioned the sculpture, and got the piece of art. And alumni contributed to build the plaza and the pathways that make it more accessible through there. So that's where that came from.
All right, the gentleman sitting next to Marshall, you sir, you had your hand up and asked your question.
So we were talking about how we want to get back resources for the school, but then again, 90% of this fee is going to athletics, and about roughly 3% of the student body is involved in somewhat athletics. So I was wondering, why did we get stuck on the 90% going to athletics? And honestly, I don't think any more than 51% should go to athletics.
Can you talk about the conference realignment and being our own institution and how no FBS school is like a
Well, let me share this, and again, I don't know if that will be convincing, but I'll at least share the information. So when this institution, many years ago, decided to go Division I, that thought was to compete at the highest level that is offered as an NCAA, as an institution that participates in college athletics. What I'll tell you is that at this level, there are about 330 Division I institutions. And there are only about 20 that can be fully sustained on their own without help from the institution. It's impossible. The Ohio States of the world, the Michigans of the world, the stadiums that have over 100,000 that can generate that revenue, there are only 20 that are about self-sustaining. So most, using those numbers, require some help from the institution, okay? I would also share that, just for context, within the league that we're a part of, right? Every Division I school is a part of a certain league. Lafayette is in the Sun Belt Conference, we're in Conference USA, UNO is another, they're all in different leagues. Within our league, we are the only school that does not receive an athletics fee. And so we're just trying to compete in our own league. So 30% of our students on a given Saturday are participating in athletics and a football game. I would also argue that, I would also present that we try to build events around it. When we do the big event, we're trying to make sure that there's some athletic events that make it a whole weekend with a spring football game, and we try to do that around certain times. When we pick homecoming, I think our staff sort of waits to see when the football schedule comes out because it's a gathering ground for alums to come back, right? And so I would just present to you that while only 336 are participating, it really impacts the entire university. And when we use athletics for a lot of things, right? To promote the rest of the institution. We use a phrase called, with a front porch sometimes. Sometimes, the first time someone hears about Louisiana Tech is when we're in Frisco playing in a conference championship. Because they only know North Texas and Tarleton and all of the schools there, right? And so I'm just painting the picture for you that if it was just about having this intramural program over there in the corner on the other side of the tracks, we would not be investing in the beginning. We wouldn't be at this level. Okay? So just giving you a bigger picture of why do we even need athletics, right? It's just more how it impacts.
I agree that some of our fees should be paying for it. The main question I was asking is how did we get that percentage for athletics? Who decides that percentage is what I was really trying to ask.
So that's kind of what I talked about earlier, was just the students deciding on a number that we were comfortable with, and then a number that was most beneficial to him. So we could have he said $135. We didn't want to propose a fee unless we thought it was going to be worth it, remember? We could have done I'm not very good at math, $270 fee. But we wanted to keep the cost low, but it'd be beneficial to athletics. Because if it wasn't gonna be necessarily beneficial to them in a large sense and make impactful change, then I didn't see the need for us to make students pay more than they are. You know what I mean? Like if it wasn't gonna be an actual beneficial, impactful change that can, and if you go on our website, you'll see the areas that would be impacted with athletics. We were short on time, so I didn't want to give an entire full presentation because those resources are already out there. But if it couldn't impact student athletes in the classroom, if it couldn't impact competitive performance, if it wouldn't impact students' experiences in the athletic world or in terms of athletics, and we didn't see a need for it to even exist in the first place. And so that's why we could have just done $135 times 2, but I didn't think that. Do you understand what I'm trying to say?
I want to point out.
Well, yeah, if you'll look, we have a good bit of people with their hand up and a ton of questions, so I'm trying to do my best, so I apologize. This gentleman in the white shirt there, you want to ask your question? Yep.
Okay, so I, like myself, I like other students on campus, get student loans and they get refund checks. I use that refund check for my rent, food on my table, to pay for anything I need to. You're asking me, I'm not involved in student life, I'm a professor like Greek life. I don't care to be involved in Greek life. If you want to be in Greek life, by all means, do you. So why are you asking me to pay for someone else's coordinator? Shouldn't Greek life pay for their own coordinator? Why are you asking the student body to pay for that? That doesn't make sense to me. Why should I have to take out more in loans to pay for a coordinator when a fraternity doesn't know how to act right? The fraternity should know how to take care of that. Why are you asking the student body to pay for that? How can you justify that? I need answers.
We'll hold off on that. Let's get somebody answer the question. Kiara, if you want to.
Well, if the only part of the fee that you're disputing right now is Greek life, would you say that would you be opposed to it if it was minus $6? If it was just that's not like an action question.
This whole thing, but I'm just pointing out one specific thing that I have a problem with. The biggest problem I have. I have a lot of problems with this whole thing, but I'm just pointing out the specific thing.
Well, I understand that, and I understand that students pay to go to school here, and I'm going to be transparent with you. Even before I was SGA president, I got a refund check, but I work 40 hours a week too, and I am involved in a lot of these things, and but I'm also involved in a lot of these things. And I'm not necessarily, if I wasn't involved in a lot of these things, I still would say, and I said this to every single one of my freshmen, this is your experience, and it's what you make it. And I think that it's the university's responsibility to provide those experiences for you. And it's my job to make sure that they have the tools to do that, and I think that this was the best way. So I'm not saying that I'm justifying it, I'm saying that this is, of all the options, this was the best. And I know that doesn't justify it, and that doesn't really answer your question, but
It doesn't justify it. I also work in a restaurant server. I know a lot of Greek people who are in Greek life who have very well-off parents. I'm pretty sure that they pay those monthly, quarterly fees, whatever it is. Why not take it out of that? Why do you have to dip into my refund check that goes towards my rent? Ask the Greek life people who pay those monthly or quarterly fees to pay for their own coordinator. That's not my problem that your fraternity sorority can't get a coordinator. Why are you asking me that?
The concept of student fees helping for support staff, auxiliary staff, coordinators on campus, directors on campus, that's not a new concept. There are a lot of your student fees that already go to things like that. I'm sorry that you particularly have a problem with the Greek life coordinator, but there are a lot of places on this campus that your fees go towards that I'd be willing to bet you don't take advantage of. And I understand that you work, a lot of people in this room are, I'm one of those people. I respect that. There are a lot of people, it takes hard work to get through college. But for you to pinpoint one part of this fee and one small part of what your student fees could potentially be going towards, this is not a new concept. I would really encourage you to talk to somebody and look into what else your student fees are going towards. To target this particular piece of it, I don't know is necessarily fair to the breakdown of it.
I can go to Landmark any day. I can go to the park any day.
You can be a Greek student any day.
It's money.
It's very selective. It's very selective. That's how
You say it's an old concept, it might be an outdated concept. I wouldn't say it's outdated. If we're one of the only institutions, not just in the state, but across the country, that does not have a full-time Greek life person. We operate basically on individuals taking a part-time approach at advising each of the 3 Greek entities. Greek life is an important concept or aspect of this institution, especially from a leadership perspective, when you look at involvement and some of those other things. But we could argue that all day. The reality is there's limited resources when it comes to administrative support. And so when you talk about having another warm body, all it's going to do is free up others of us who are right now maybe spending time there, maybe spending time elsewhere. But it's unusual not to have a full-time Greek life person.
All right, Senator Miller, I saw your hand up.
Thank you all for coming here and discussing this. For the Greek life coordinator, we've seen, I think in the last couple of years, probably, as a person who's involved with life themselves, I think there's many positive aspects of Greek life. But if we have coordinators, you can be able to combat more effectively issues of maybe sexual assault, hazing, issues that really kind of plague Greek life now. If we had this person in this position, that would affect the entire student campus, the student body.
Absolutely.
Okay, the gentleman in the back, or the individual in the back.
Hey there, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I kind of had a question as to just kind of the general communication strategy of university administration regarding this fee. It's my understanding that this kind of thing has been in kind of the works for months, as as big changes normally take. So with that being said, I guess I kind of had to ask the administration why it's taken like the sort of approach it's taken in regards to communicating the changes about this fee. I guess perhaps not letting us know earlier when it was first developed, or seeing how the administration has kind of left it to SGA to kind of communicate these changes. I'm sorry, I forget your name.
Dr.
Yes,
Wood.
Yeah.
Dr. Wood?
Dr. Wood. I went to one of your presentations regarding the ban, and you made a presentation where it kind of broke down where like all the $135 went, and I found that kind of interesting, kind of compelling, but that kind of information wasn't really communicated to the student body at large, and I'm kind of wondering why the
Hey, so we're really short on time, so I really want to answer your question, but I hate to cut you off, but I want to answer your question. So I think to speak to the communication process of this fee is to actually be able to say that there was one. And it's very, very important for us to realize how transparent this process has been. And I want you to know this because there are other institutions who have recently done things like this and have done things like this in the past. So when do we vote? We vote on April 7th and April 8th, and those institutions found out that day. They didn't know what they were voting on. They didn't know the dollar amount they were voting on. This was posted everywhere. This from our Instagram, from our social media, which also was on our website. We talked about it on our live stream in an in-depth presentation. It was also at our open SGA meeting. We've talked to almost every organization and tried to publicize a lot of those things. We had a panel last week to communicate about it. My email is always open, and all of SGA, not just mine, not just our exec team, but all of our contact information is located on that website. You can find their contact information on Safari. But the reason that this wasn't communicated in December was because it had to be approved. Remember the friend group that we talked about, the UL system? The UL system board had to approve this fee before it could go to the ballot. So there wasn't necessarily any need to spread it to 10,000 people if it was going to not even be an opportunity, because for one, people would be upset that their areas weren't getting funds, and two, it could have very well not even been a possibility, and it could have just been a next step. And what I mean by that is nobody would have ever known if the board would not have approved it. But also, the next step after the board meeting could not have been to talk about it at SGA, to talk about it, to post it for the student body, to post an in-depth breakdown of it and description of it on the internet. It could have just been to let it slide on the ballot. And I do want to just point out that all of our SGA positions are unopposed this year. So there wouldn't have been a whole lot of people voting to vote yes or no. So if 90% of the student body, like I say, well, I'll give y'all some credit, 70% of the student body probably wouldn't have even known about the fee if it wasn't communicated the way that it was. And I think that having this town hall meeting and our administration sitting here right now is way bigger than a lot of you are realizing. I don't know another university president that would take an hour out of their day past 5 to sit here and answer questions from an everyday student. And I think that it's very important for us to realize that even if you don't agree with the fee, I'm not asking to. I'm just saying that we wanted to provide you, I wanted to provide you with the tools to educate yourself on what you would be voting for. I wanted to provide you with the tools to educate yourself on, to form an opinion. Because I am in your corner as a student. You don't have to vote yes or no, that's not the point. You just have to vote. And that we wanted to provide you the opportunities to do that. And the reason it wasn't communicated before February was because of the board meeting, and that's the short answer to your question. But it was communicated right after that.
Yeah, my question was more of, not really like why it was communicated then, but like, why has the administration chosen to take like more of a route, like, you know, kind of through SGA and like two auxiliary panels?
That's our job.
As opposed to like, you know, taking like a dual prong approach.
And there were people there were this table of people, this group of people, this focus group that constructed this fee was not SGA. They came together as leaders that they were, as student leaders from across campus. The international student president, the Black student union president, the IFC president, the Panhellenic president, the union board president, the NPHC president, the PLC president, the Peer Leadership Council, the Counseling Center president. It wasn't SGA. It was a sum of a lot of the groups that make up a majority of our student body. Those are larger groups. Those are some of the largest campus organizations. We're gonna have to.
So I guess to talk about the process a little bit, there was no need for us to, as a university, even approach this if the student leaders, the campus student body was necessary to move forward. Number one. Number two, as QR mentioned, it had to go to the University of Louisiana System Board for their approval to go to you for a student vote. So they were not going to vote to allow us to go to you as a student vote, and it was going to be for us to broadcast it into a larger audience until that happened. So it was done in kind of concentric circles in order to make sure we were following a process that was making sure student leadership agreed as your representatives, and also the University of Louisiana System Board agreed. So another thing I want to mention, the gentleman in the back, and many of you think seems like agree that the cost of higher education has gone up over the last several years, last decades, and that's very accurate. And so, just to give you a little part of the reason why for that. Before 2008, in this state, there was a massive tax cut. The governor of the state cut taxes to the residents of the state. Right before 2008, there was a nationwide recession that hit the whole country. And so what happened across the country, not just in the state, but particularly in the state, is that when things like that happen, so the revenues of the state go in this direction, one of the areas that get cut the quickest is higher education, public higher education. And so, Dr. Guys, correct me if I'm wrong, but prior to 2008, this state, like the cost to run Louisiana Tech University, about 70 to 75% was funded by the taxpayers of the state of Louisiana, 70 to 75%. Okay. Today, less than 5%. No, it's 20%. 20% is funded by the state now. And so it has been a big change. So to make that difference up, you're right, it's the students and their parents who have been paying a large percentage of that change, as well as alumni to make up that difference. So the state used to fund public higher education. And so that is a big reason why you see the cost of higher education go up is the state. Politicians have chosen not to fund higher education in the way it did previously. They said that we put that primarily on the back of the student and parents as well as the university to raise that money on its own other ways. The other thing I guess I just want to say, how many of you are from out of state, not from Louisiana? Raise your hand. Just a few. Okay. Well, so 90+% of our students from out of state do not pay out of state fees. We waive those fees, and that's another thing that we've done over the years is to try to draw students to this university and recruit them. Is we waive fees. We've also increased scholarships in order to help offset the rising cost of higher education. And so that's the other thing we try to do is we try to help students be successful through tuition and fee waivers and scholarships. And our students have done a great job of being successful in higher education, graduating in less than right at 4 years. And so we have a high graduation rate. We want to continue to increase that. But we're here to help students be successful. None of us would be here if that's not our mission. And so we want students to come to Louisiana Tech University, be successful here, stay here, and graduate from here. And that's what we're all about. And if any of this that we're talking about is going to do harm to that, then that's not what we be behind. So just so I want you to hear that from us, that's not what we're about. We're about helping students be successful. So.
All right, and then our last question for the night, because we're running short on time, we have a room reservation after this. And the gentleman with the blue Powerade there, if you want to ask you.
Appreciate you. I have one basic conceptual question on how this was communicated, not when or why, or maybe a little why. In today's email from you, Dr. Guys, it's put underserved students at the top of the list of things this funds and put the athletics at the bottom. That's a deceiving way of presentation in broad. 90% of the fees, the main thing is athletics. You would think you would talk about it first. And then this 10% of the fees, which is kind of like a PR allowance of saying this supports other things, not just athletics. And see, it really comes off as a PR to say, oh, this is for underserved students, when 90% goes to overserved students. That's just my personal opinion. I was wondering why that decision was made.
My university communications office put that message together, and I think it's an order in which
It's in the same order that we put it on.
I think it's what we presented. I don't know why it would be perceived to be misleading. I can't imagine anyone being more open and honest with you than I have. Can you?
I believe you're being open and honest. It's just the way it's presented allows for perception to be different. I mean, when you speak highly of helping underserved students and the numbers speak highly of serving overserved students, you know, those in Greek life or that are partake in athletics, which is great programs, but those students typically have a lot of resources they're already enjoying from school. So to market it as it's helping most and it's really helping the few is just, it's how it easily comes off.
I'm not trying to market anything. I'm just trying to inform you. I don't know of many other presidents around the country that send out 2 or 3 emails a week to communicate to students. Huh?
I read every single one of them. I enjoy it.
Well, I'll quit doing it. And listen, each one of you is important at Louisiana Tech. Each one of you has a different view and a different perspective, and that's what makes it a great university. I didn't play football in college. I wasn't in a fraternity. I came here 50 years ago when I found my wife who happened to be in a sorority, right? And we had a good time when we went to dances and things like that. I could dance at one time. But it's this, you know, that's what makes a great university. That's what makes a national university. I had a chancellor from Texas Tech, an emeritus chancellor, that contacted me yesterday. Never met me before, had been a congressman. But he wanted to congratulate me on the great coach that we hired from his institution at Texas Tech. But he talked about Louisiana Tech out-punching its weight class in academic. We started talking about academics and the research centers that they have and the research centers that we have in academic programs. That visibility comes because of athletics in big part and the fact that we attract a lot of students. It really is the way that the university gets communicated around the nation, and it's a way that brings people back to this campus and brings people to the here for the first time. We have about 15% out-of-state students, and no other universities around here do that, right? And it's the level of activities that we have both in athletics, but also in fraternities, sororities, and all of the tremendous student organizations here. So thanks for your question and comment.
As an architecture student, I spent a lot of time in that building. We have one of the best architecture programs in the country. We subserve the NAB accreditations, which is what all architecture schools are accredited off. And we are one of the most underfunded institutions. There's no architecture fee. This should be called the athletics fee. That is my main point. This is an athletics fee, not a student engagement fee. It does not benefit the whole, in my experience of 5 years or 4 years.
And your president is a graduate of that program.
Yes.
I'll go write a check.
Thank you. Please do. We need it.
And I do just want to say that I've never shied away from the fact that I've always said this is an athletic-centric fee. And I've always said that this is an athletic-centric fee that we had to, and I don't market underserved students because I don't think about that. I don't think in that way. But if that's what we had to do to get the funding that we could get, I mean, I don't think it's $70,000 to underserved students, and I don't think that, and I know that you don't care to hear that from me, but I promise you that there's nothing that we tried to do to cover up anything in a marketing scheme, because we've done nothing but actually give you the information, it felt slimy to me for it to just be slapped on a ballot and none of you know, and your boss go up $150 in the fall, and you just pay it because you thought you didn't think about it. And that's genuinely what could have happened. And that was slimy to me. And so if it seemed like we marketed something, all we ever tried to do was push it out. And we could have put athletics at the top, but it just was, the biggest one was at the bottom, and then 150. So it's not like it was a long list of things. So I do apologize if that's how it was perceived, but that's never what was intended. But there is a meeting in this room right now. All of these questions that were scanned on the QR code not answered, I'm going to answer them. And I know they're anonymous, so we're going to post them on our website. If you click on the website and you press student engagement proposal, and there's a big list of all this fee is going to, you should read it. And then there's a frequently asked questions tab, and I'll try to have all of these uploaded by Friday.
Gentlemen, one last thing before you leave. Again, I want to thank you for taking the time to come. But I would also ask you to do this. Take the amount of time that y'all have spent trying to create this fee and figure out how you can lower other fees in other areas to lower the cost of tuition and attendance for the student body as a whole. That's all I would ask.
And I want to speak to Dr. Geis's thing about visibility. What do y'all define as an underserved student? Like what?
Yeah.
Do you even know the proper demographics of underserved students?